I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like live here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be back. Happy to be your host. Good morning to everybody. Please come on in. Like the ear doctor says, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend that we've gotten started. We're holding it down for the Remix Morning Show crew until we get back and reconvene on our Monday next Tuesday. Until then, you got a couple episodes of I Mix What I Like live with me and some important and special guests who will be joining me in just a moment. Not the least of which is my brother and comrade and co-host on these Fridays, Brother Kaba, who will be joining me in just a moment as well. And we have a lot to get into today, not only with our special guests, but a number of different stories, including some discussion of the Heights and Rita Moreno and cryptocurrency and the myth of buying power back in the press. Your man popped up in another interview in the Insider that came out, the Business Insider that came out this morning, and we need to talk about it because it do what it do. But of course, we are still also coming off of, I would be normally talking about, I'd be launching this with this program, our Dope Fridays here at Black Power Media. We are obviously going to be, lacking a little bit in that this week, again, with the passing of our dear brother, Abdus, Luqman, and again, our hearts and love and support go out to Sister Jacquie. The Last Dope Intellectual, which I'm still finishing up now, will air in at least in portion. Of course, word came of Abdus's death as we were taping, so we didn't actually finish. So even editing that has been a little bit of a challenge, just because I'm watching like the last moments of our crew before word had come, and the fun and the happiness, and then to see the immediate shift. So, but that will happen, and then we will be on with Renegade Culture tonight as well. So we're going to do the best we can to maintain Dope Fridays, but they will be a little less dope, obviously, this week and going forward until we somehow find a way to in an impossible way reconstitute what can't be constituted again in full. So shout out to all those who are here this morning. Those who will join us, please do like, share, subscribe, consider joining. I think I saw that we had a new member, Josh Morales. Shout out to you, Josh. Welcome on board. Good morning to Ricky, brother Jamil. My brother Jamil. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. Okay. All right. Big brother family in the building. Good morning. Shirley. And now I'm seeing the text I didn't respond to too. Okay, my bad. So that's not a good look on my part, but I apologize. I'm just catching up to that too. Lisa, Jadorian, Michael, Big Teal, Anthony, all of you big, Dawn, Sugar Booger, can't miss that one. Oforiwa. My apologies. Good morning to you as well. And Craig, everybody, good morning. Welcome. Please do come on in. Brother Kaba is with me. Good morning to you, sir. Welcome back. It's always good to see you. Appreciate you. Anyway, Did you want to quickly say anything before we get moving? I wanted to give you a chance to you sent some. We do have an update, by the way, from Sister Jacquie at her request. But you had sent a note, brother, that to me. I don't know if you want to share any of that. Anyway, good morning, man. Good morning.
Well, yeah, good morning, and I apologize. I don't have my normal shirts on, my melanin apparel shirts. I just ran in from the gym, so I'm still funky. So I'll be funky for the next 2 hours.
That's gross and an overshare, and worse than that is that I don't hear a mic. That's what's worse. That's the worst part, or a headset of some kind. That's unfortunately worse.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with tech issues, man. It's been crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
But anyway, that's not the funk we want, my man. That's. But anyway, it's still good to see you. However you do show up, we happy to see you, man.
Yeah, no doubt, and good to be seen. Better seen than viewed.
Indeed.
Do I sound a little better now?
A little bit.
Okay. Yeah, next week we'll be back on. I'm kind of like in transition, so stuff is kind of like all over the place right now.
Okay, so, got you.
Unfortunately. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm just still in shock.
Oh, now you frozen though. Hold on, now you frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but now you frozen.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
we're gonna get this together.
It's a good shot. I mean, it's a good shot of the big smile, but it's just that's all we got.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So while he's getting, I'm putting the link in the chat now. To what we got from Sister Jacquie earlier. We are encouraging folks, if they can, to share their support in memory of Baba Luqman and support for Sister Jacquie Luqman. Abdus's daughter, I believe, Shamir Johnson, is organizing this. Hi, my name is Shamir. Well, right there it is. Hi, my name is Shamir Johnson. I'm the only daughter and youngest child of Abdul Shahid Baba Luqman. In the sudden and untimely passing of my father, we need your support. As many of you know, Luqman Nation has been very prominent over the last 5 years in not only speaking up for, but also acting on behalf of change for the Black community and change for our nation as a whole. This was done as a team, my father, along with his best friend and loving wife, Jacquie Luqman. We want that they have, we want what they have started to never die. We want my father's legacy in fighting for justice to continue to grow. We want his best friend to have to not deal with any added burden. In doing that while learning how to continue life without her soulmate, we ask that you donate for this endeavor. All proceeds will go directly to Jacquie Luqman to navigate the days ahead and keep Luqman Nation and its mission alive. Thank you for loving my father from near and far. I know if he could say one thing, he would say, don't stop fighting. And so we put the link in the chat. It's also included in the show notes and description to this video. So please, if at all possible, send your donation, and we will, of course, continue to update as we get them from Jacquie and the family. Brother Kaba is back in the building. I think if we can, since our time is a little bit limited, I think our guest time is a little bit limited. I want to go ahead and bring them on up and get to this. And then after that, we can come back and spend some time with some other stories that we can get into. But first, one of our guests, of course, is well known to our program. He is, among many other things, author of Paulu's Diaspora, Black Internationalism and Environmental Justice. He's Dr. Keto Swan. professor of Africana Studies and director of the William Monroe Trotter Institute at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. And joining him and us also will be Dr. Margaret Stevens, who is going to be here to discuss her book published in 2017, Red International and Black Caribbean Communists in New York City, Mexico, and the West Indies, 1919 to 1939. Dr. Stevens is a professor in the Department of History at Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey. She's a contributor to the volume Communist Histories, Volume 1, and author also of Red International and Black Caribbean. I welcome them both to the program. Good morning. Good to see you. Welcome. Nice to meet you, Sister Margaret, and good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Big up, everyone. Big up.
Right on, right on. Good to see everybody. Dr. Stevens, I thought we would just start with you and start with the simple question of what it is that you're attempting to share in this book. I have unfortunately not finished it in its entirety yet, as is still the case with Dr. Swan's, to be perfectly honest as well.
Shame.
I mean, shame. You know, like my man, Dr. Haight called me yesterday. He said he called me Dr. GM Shames. Anyway, so yeah, Dr. GM Shames is back in the building.
Speaking of the Caribbean,
I was gonna say, and only real Africana scholars really get that joke. So you know, we're gonna stay a little esoteric on that one if necessary. But Dr. Stevens, I mean, your book, I mean, at least so far, it is fascinating, and you know, a combination of subjects I would have to imagine too many of us have not spent enough time focused on. So could you just give us a quick summary of what you were doing in that work, and maybe more broadly in what appears to be all of your work?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that in this book, I was in school, so this was a thesis. This was the PhD, which became a book. So I think that, I was surrounded by all these folks from the Caribbean. When I was in school, all of my mentors, all the professors were Marxists from the Caribbean, and so I'm like, I don't know anything about that. I mean, I've heard about all these communists from New York and Alabama, but wait, they had that in Jamaica and Haiti and Grenada, and I know about the later period, the 80s and things, but I never knew about what was happening during the Scottsboro Boys campaign in the Great Depression, in Jamaica or Haiti. And so I think that being surrounded by people who were radical and from the Caribbean forced me to ask myself about the previous period and those same people. And, part of the goal was to always see the relationship between Black workers and communism. I think the general idea, period, is that communism is for white people. Socialism is for white people. And, black folks, we can figure out our own version, but we've got to do our own thing. We have our own history and tradition. And so therefore, we have to, right? So point being, I was just curious about if folks always felt that way and if people always responded and how people responded to this idea of classless society, right? In the context of the Soviet Union. And so when the Bolshevik Party came to power in the Soviet Union, which was the party that led the revolution and the creation of socialism in Russia, and then later other parts of what became the Soviet Union. I just wanted to know what that meant to people in Cuba then, right before Castro. So I think that Keto and I just participated in this panel together about transnationalism. And I think that to the extent that it is a useful concept, the point is that what it did, precisely the way Keto articulated it in that essay he sent to me, it's just this idea of seeing beyond borders when you're trying to look at any particular social or political process or movement. And I saw something that hadn't been written yet, and people had alluded to it. One of my mentors, Robin Kelly, sorry, not Robert Kelly, that's funny. Robin Kelly, he alluded to in this essay he wrote with a woman named Tiffany Patterson. He asked the question. He said, "What about the labor movement in the Caribbean? What was happening there?" And so I just decided to answer the question. I just decided to commit 6 or 7 years looking to it, and it took me to Haiti, Jamaica, Barbados, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. It took me to Mexico. I mean, this book is called Black Caribbean, but Mexico plays a very important role in that. And I still think theoretically I haven't really worked out the full implications of that yet. It took me to Panama. It took me to so many places. And of course, it took me to London and New York City and the Soviet Union and Germany and Guyana, British Guyana and Trinidad. So I did what I could to try to, expose something that I felt hadn't been articulated. It hadn't been articulated in communist history. People hadn't written about it. I think people still think of communist history and don't think of the Caribbean. And I hadn't read it in any of the Caribbean history that I'd read either. So I felt like the relationship between Black workers and the Comintern, and the Comintern is short for Communist International, which was the big umbrella of organizations based out of the Soviet Union, like the headquarters. So I felt like that whole moment had been just not addressed, and if not erased. So, that's what I was trying to do from a pro-communist perspective. And I think that was what made this book a little different, is that I wasn't writing it to demonstrate, aha, you see why Stalin is the enemy, or, aha, you see why communism doesn't work. But I was also writing it to say, aha, you see what the fundamental weaknesses were of the communist movement that helped lead us to, Obama in the White House and thinking that's a good thing. So, the point was to look at the internal contradictions within the communist movement around questions of racism, anti-racism, and anti-colonialism, and to identify what I believed were the contradictions that helped give way to the failures, the ultimate failures of all of these so-called socialist and communist efforts, all the way up to Grenada, to be honest with you. My son has just woken up at the perfectly wrong time, which is what I told you guys was going to happen.
No. There's never a wrong
it.
time.
We're going
it's
to
all
work
good.
with it. You're going to give me 1 second so that
Of
I can
course.
distract him properly.
That's
and
why
I'm
I brought.
Keto,
That's why we brought some help. Yeah,
I
it's
know.
all good.
I know.
Well, I just wanna say enough respect for the coordination of the camouflage to the audience that wasn't playing. That's just how folks roll.
Oh
That's
my
how
goodness.
folks roll.
Well, see, because I love that you
Daddy.
brought the comradelyship, brother Keto, because I was going to throw some hate in the game. Look at my man. What's up, my man? Because I was wondering. Really, I was as I was reading as much as I could of Margaret's work. I was thinking, is her book the explanation? Could we say that her book is the explanation for why communism doesn't feature almost at all in yours? In other words,
explain more, sir.
Well, because you make the point that Paulu and others represent a wing of the Pan-African struggle that says, look, we dig that some folks read Marx and are moved by Marx, and we dig some good might have come of that, but we have our own traditions. We don't really need all of that. And your book seems to focus on on him and those who went in that direction, saying we can focus elsewhere. Whereas Margaret seems to be outlining an explanation with a focus on communist history in at least parts of the similar regions of the world that you deal with, where the people do directly deal with it, and then maybe walk away saying, maybe this is why maybe this is why there is the Paolu wing of the struggle. And my real one quick point in that and I might be getting this all wrong, so I'm happy to be checked on this. But is because I skipped ahead in Margaret's book to where she's talking about Haiti, given what's going on in Haiti right now, and seems to always be going on given Haiti's relationship here. But she wrote here, talking about this activist Romain, if I'm saying the name correctly. The release of Romain in 1936 took place in the historical context of not only increasing political repression against radical dissidents in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, but also increasing economic hardship for migrant Haitian laborers who had been recently deported from Cuba and forced to work in the Dominican Republic during the World Depression. While supporters of Romain, this is communist supporters, that is Communist Party supporters in the United States and elsewhere, while supporters of Romain were surely rejoicing at his release, this network of progressives seems to have had an ideological short in its circuit. They were strangely silent when tens of thousands of nameless, faceless, shoeless Haitian migrant peasants, and by the way, Margaret dedicates her book to those who are shoeless, shoeless Haitian migrant peasants and city dwellers without distinguished lineage were massacred in 1937. No trial, no jailing, nor sentence. More to the point, the communist network of organizations in New York that had traditionally been aligned with the Haitian masses was essentially absent when Haitians living and working in the Dominican Republic had become political prisoners and economic refugees caught in a matrix of mass deportations and anti-communist legislation, end quote. So my point is I'm saying, as I'm reading Margaret's and I'm thinking about your book and still working through it as well, it seems that she's adding a nice bit of detail as to why, again, your focus is on those who said we can't depend on, wait for, focus on, work through this Marxist communist movement and lens.
Well, you know what I would say is yes and no. It's yes and no. CLR James is actually the person Paulo considers to be his mentor. You know, CLR James is the person who Paulo probably is closest with of the generation. He knows James from a child. When James comes to Bermuda, he can't stay in racist white hotels. He stays at his house. He meets James again in New York when James is giving a talk, I think, at Abyssinian Baptist Church. And by the end of the story, you know, James is asking to be his bodyguard when he returns to Trinidad, like in the 70s, 80s. So he's really close with James. But you're right in the extent of Paulo is not a communist. And as you proceed to chapter 9, I have a discussion of that relationship and how, you know, for Paulo, that really wasn't, him and James still had this interesting connection, although Paulo is very much not a communist. And I think you're absolutely right that most of Paulo's circles are Black thinkers of other, you know, frames of Pan-Africanism, but is also close to Nkrumah, who's also socialist. But there's a story that I tell in that chapter where Paulo, when he's in Tanzania, University of Dar es Salaam, with folks like Rodney, who was also really close with, they would, faculty at University of Dar es Salaam would have these conversations about should they work with the community. It's no, I don't want to be polite. If it's polite, I'm not doing it right. I don't want to be polite on a Friday, Black Power Media morning. Check me, brother Kabab. I'm polite, please, brother. Check me. Because my response to you was funky, fresh, dressed, impressed, ready to party like MC Light, and Jared didn't post it. I'm a little upset about that.
I didn't even. Because you put that
up there, so I feel away already. You know what I mean? I came here. I already feel away.
Private chat.
But then I put it in YouTube too. Because I realized, you know what, this ain't right. I want everybody to see that. Like, I thought that was all right. I probably that shit got forward, and it did. I just came from the gym, so I got the funky part down, brother. Respect for that. Respect, 100. No, but Paulo mentions how they had these conversations where they should do something They should do something for the community. So they would go out every weekend and work with farmers who are harvesting their crops, and they would have these conversations. So they're around this bonfire, and one of the professors, I guess, who was Marxist leaning, asked the farmer, "Oh, what do you do if you access crops?" And the farmer says, "Oh, well, we divide it up evenly, and we give it to whoever needs it." And so the professor says, "Oh, that's an excellent Marxist principle." And then the farmer says, "Who's Marx?" So the professor says, "Oh, Marx was from Germany." Da, 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 da. And then the farmer says, and they're speaking of Kiswahili, "Well, my father's father said the Germans were, they enslaved us. So who is this? Can you say some more?" So they had this big debate. And at the end, the farmer just says, he extends his arm and then speaks Kiswahili and says, "That what you're talking about is really an extension of African socialism." And that kind of ended the discussion. And so that was kind of Paulu's. He told that story quite a lot, to talk about how he saw himself as being a socialist, but he had anxieties about European colonialism. So he was very much, he had a lot of anxieties around that, but he still had a lot of relationships with Black people who were communists, like once again C.L.R. James and others. But I think you're absolutely right. That's not a major focus of the book, which is why I'm thrilled about Margaret's research, and I want to really know more about some of these connections that you mentioned with Mexico, the Black women you talk about.
Now we got to start with the Panama part.
So
right,
okay, I could see that. Yes,
I heard that.
Nothing beat that. Right.
She said that loud. She said it took me to Panama. I said
Panama, capital P.
You know what I mean? Big bold letters. So Dr. Stevens, whenever you feel unmutable, please do jump on in and feel free to respond to anything you might have heard from Keto, and or if we could just pick up on what you saw in Panama. What is this communist history in Panama, or how does it overlap with that region?
Well, a few things. First, with Keto, I need to know what the time frame is of that project. What are the years? I think, obviously in history, time matters. From a Western history perspective. And so I do also think that I don't think time is circular or anything like that. I do think that events cause events, which cause events. I don't think that there's any particular guaranteed historical arc or conclusion that we're all going to, but I do think that this notion or idea that history can be progressive is a useful concept. So I say that just because the time period that we're talking about now that I was looking at was from 1919 to 1939. So when you're looking at pre-World War II and post-World War II Black revolutionary movements, World War II is decisive almost no matter how you cut it, no matter where you go. And this is not just Black movements, this is any social and political movement, honestly. So mine is pre-World War II. Well, let me bring that back to Panama. I mean, I'm sure you guys all know Panama was a huge outpost for Marcus Garvey with the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association. Well, what is one of the underlying themes of the book? One of the underlying themes of my work is, to what extent is multiracial unity a just as, if not more, useful method for fighting racism than race-based unity, right? That's a basic question that is underneath all of this that we're talking about, period. So Panama is an awesome space for investigating that question. Basically because it is, and I'm starting with the Panama Canal Zone, but Panama, on some level, is a U.S. created nation, and right, the Panama Canal was the piece that the U.S. got in return for helping Panama break from Colombia. And so the United States brought with it to the Panama Canal Zone the system of racist segregation in the labor force that they had been using in the United States for already 250 years. So the system of racist segregation and super exploitation of Black labor was a system that they had essentially perfected by the turn of the century, from the 18 into the 1900s, when they were moving into the Panama Canal Zone. And so, for the most part, they brought, right, these white so-called professional laborers, engineers and such from the US. And most of the Black workers that they brought were not from Alabama or Texas. They were mainly from the English-speaking Caribbean. So they were from Barbados, Jamaica, and all the English-speaking islands. Why? Because they could communicate with them. It's very similar to a project that I'm working on now about the U.S. oil refinery in Aruba, which was at one point the largest oil refinery in the world. It's Exxon. It's the folks from Exxon, basically. Standard Oil. Standard Oil had an oil refinery in Aruba that was the largest oil refinery in the world. Aruba is a Dutch island, but they allowed the United States to have the southernmost tip of their country, their colony, because it was close to Venezuela. So the United States was able to get the oil from Venezuela and refine it in Aruba. And they recruited Black workers from all over the English-speaking Caribbean to work in their refinery at the low end of their refinery industry. But that's thousands and thousands of Black workers from Barbados and all these islands in Aruba, who still to this day, when you go to Aruba, there's still a English-speaking side of the island, which is the Black side of the island, and the Dutch side of the island, which is the Aruban, whatever. Aruba's a whole nother thing. But the point is the same, which is that the United States brought everywhere it went its Jim Crow system of labor. And so that brought with it all the political and social implications of that two-tiered system of economic production. But economic production is the basis. That's the point that we need to understand. All this revolves around their desire to maximize profit in these different outposts of their empire. And so Panama, the construction of the canal, obviously was a huge moment in United States imperial expansion, right? And United States establishing itself as a global superpower to be reckoned with. They weren't yet the superpower that they are now when they were building that canal. But, the superpowers in Europe were in the process of killing each other off. And so the United States was in many ways spared from that and able to grow while these other guys were, blasting each other to smithereens during World War I and World War II. In any case, I'm trying to give you the context, not for you. I don't want to assume any of you don't know this, but just for the folks who are listening so that they understand how it connects, right? So Panama is fascinating, similar to Belize, but Panama is fascinating because you have all of these Black people who speak Spanish and English. I mean, and you meet all these Black people in Panama with, speaking Spanish with Bayesian accents, and I just met a woman from Belize, because I'm working on another project about a man named Hugh Molzak, who's from St. Vincent. And his nephew lives down in DC. He's married to a woman from Belize who speaks She's Spanish with a her father was from Barbados, her mother's from Nevis or St. Kitts, something like that. So that alone is fascinating. But the point is that what happens, right, is that in Panama you have a two-tiered labor system and you have a two-tiered social system and political system where these black workers are um, treated inhumanely, to say the least. And so Marcus Garvey, um, primarily, though he did have a base with non-English speaking black workers, he did. His primary base around the world was in those places where workers spoke English. That's where he had his strongest influence because of the language. I'm not in any way taking away from all the research and work that's been done on his work in Spanish speaking places. He had a huge influence on Cuba, on the Spanish speaking people of Cuba, but primarily his influence was on the English speaking black work diaspora around the world. So he had a huge base in Panama, right? Because these black workers in Panama are exhausted. And what I came across in my research was that, however, it wasn't just Garvey's UNIA, right? So the African Blood Brotherhood also tried to start a chapter in Panama, and I don't know how successful they ended up becoming. And by 1925, there was a Communist Party of Panama. Now, when I say that my book took me to places, I mean it took me there. It doesn't mean I went deep. Because if I had gone deep into Panama, I wouldn't have been able to write that little bit about Haiti that you just mentioned. Because the point is that the contradictions I'm talking about that emerge that you can really look at clearly when you do put Haiti under a magnifying glass, you're going to see those contradictions in every single place. Because these are contradictions around nationalism. And nationalism is a contradiction that has infiltrated every single social and political movement in the world over the past 100 years. So what I was trying to do was use Haiti just because everyone in Black radicalism uses the Haitian Revolution as a litmus test for freedom and emancipation for Black people, right? So bringing Haiti back into that fold through this communist story is a way of complicating the narrative. With Panama, I was really curious to see, honestly, how successful was Garvey's movement there? That's really what I wanted to know. Because, with the research that I was looking into with the Black Star Line, right, you can look at it from different angles. And I hope that I'm not speaking too much and not answering your question.
No,
But
I'm
with when, like I said, you have to start with, I believe, Garvey, when you're looking at this 1919 moment, because there were people out there trying to push, multiracial unity. I didn't find that much out about how successful they were, but it's very difficult to push multiracial unity when huge numbers of white workers are racist. There's no basis for multiracial unity when the white workers in your area are reactionary. So, I was looking, more into
but also
Garvey.
Dr. Stevens is the point you brought out in the clip that I read, that there's the contradiction of even white progressives not maintaining consistent loyalty and solidarity.
Right. Now that's a chronology question as well, because at that point we're talking about 1936, and the moment that I'm talking about now with you is 1919, right after World War One. Well, why does that matter? I mean, you could take this stuff in a million directions. The reason it matters to point out that you chose a chapter that's dealing with 1936 is because by that point, Italy had invaded Ethiopia already. So, in other words, World War II had started, right? World War II doesn't start when Germany invades Poland in 1939. World War II starts when Italy invades Africa, right? For all intents and purposes. And then what happens in 1936 is that the fascist movement in Spain overthrows the democratically elected government that was pro-Soviet Union. So by 1936, the point is that communists have serious choices to make. Okay. And so when they decide that fascism is the greatest evil, what they're trying to say is, look at what Italy just did to Ethiopia. Look at what's happening in Spain. Look at what Hitler is preparing already to invade the Soviet Union. We don't have time right now we don't have time to beef with the Prime Minister of England. We don't have time to beef with the President of the United States, because these fascists who are aligned are posing the more immediate threat. And so if we don't think strategically around immediate threats, and if we don't think popularly around uniting and putting our beef to the side around a bigger threat, we can come back to our beef with the US later. We can come back to that later. Right now, we need to look at what's happening in Spain, in Italy, right, and Germany. That's what we call the popular front, right? So the point that I was trying to make to you in that book is that by 1936, these same progressives who in 1919 and in 1925 and in 1933 had been saying, the president of Haiti is a dictator. All the president of the United States is a dictator. These guys are racist murderers. Look at Scottsboro. These same folks had to back up and say, you know what? Yeah, we don't like the president of Haiti. We don't like the president of the US, but who we don't like worse is the head of Germany, the head of Italy, right? So we've got to decide this a little bit more strategically. The point I was trying to make in that book, is that approach to fighting fascism, saying, okay, there are lesser evil dictators, right? That the United States is no longer our number one enemy anymore, so we need to align with them. Let's not be so harsh on Rafael Trujillo, because who was the dictator of the Dominican Republic that you're talking about in 1936. Once you start saying these guys, in other words, once you vote for Obama, saying, well, he's not as bad as whoever, what happens to your concept of freedom? What happens to the fight against racism? What happens to anti-imperialism? I was a member of something called the Iraq Veterans Against the War, just to bring it home so you can understand the relevance today. So I was one of those veterans who was organizing against the United States invasion of Iraq after 9/11. It became a worldwide movement. That's a whole nother podcast. And, what we saw in that movement was that we were basically told, when Obama started running for president, those of us who understood what imperialism really was, we were told, we're not against Obama. So if you're going to be Iraq Veterans Against the War, you can't speak out against US in Afghanistan, because Obama is for Afghanistan. He is not about pulling out of Afghanistan. So in other words, you couldn't truly be anti-imperialist in this organization, because this organization had adopted some sort of popular front idea about who the greater evil is and the greater threat is. And so we basically had to condone US imperialism in Afghanistan, because that was Obama's position. And we didn't want to look like we were challenging Obama, because our organization was basically led by the Democratic Party and calling itself an anti-war group.
We do have to come back and talk with you about that, because
but it connects, though. It does connect.
It does.
It's a modern day analogy to make you understand what I'm saying. The historical contradictions were back then that communists set themselves up for. That I think all of us, honestly, are still caught in that same matrix, no matter what our ideology is.
Can I jump in real quick?
Absolutely.
I found that interesting too. Like you, Margaret, I'm Army veteran, and it's so interesting to see people. And I was stationed in Panama, by the way. So the Panama conversation was also very.
And Mark, just so you're clear, I was in the Navy, and my wife's from Panama. That's where all the other connections
no
are.
wonder you guys jumped on Panama. Yeah. Oh, I'm like, why are they so interested in Panama? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Panama is very special.
Jared always has an agenda, some personal agenda.
That's all this is all about.
This is all about Jared. It's all about Jared. But no, I mean, so I have a very special connection to Panama too, because that's where I was kind of like politicized while in the military. So it was just interesting. It's always interesting to me to hear other veterans and their evolution and their consciousness in the military. I don't think a lot of people know a lot about that. And like Jared said in another conversation, should probably get to that. But you talked about Garvey's influence in basically Anglophone or of English speaking nations, being more prevalent because of the language. Can you talk a little bit about what you talked about in terms of the crackdowns on those same English speaking nations by fascists, by Western imperialism? Because you mentioned how there was a big crackdowns on those nations as opposed to other nations that were Spanish and French speaking.
In terms of, you mean like during this 1919 period to the 1939 period?
Yes. Yes.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you redirected me, because that's also one of the places that I tried to take up in my book, which is that after World War I, Garvey's newspaper, yeah, give me 1 second, Garvey's newspaper, made it into Trinidad. It made it into all of these places alongside these other newspapers like the Crusader, the Emancipator. There were a bunch of newspapers that were out at that time. And so the colonial British government banned all of this material as contraband. That's one of the things that was fascinating to me, is that if you were in Trinidad or if you were in Barbados and you received Garvey's UNI paper, or if you received any of these newspapers coming out of Harlem, they all sounded awesome to you, all of them, because they were all talking about Black workers trying to identify alternative visions of freedom. And so from Trinidad, you're not going to get the same sectarian hostility that you had in Harlem over whose side are you on, right? You were in trouble whether you were found with any of the papers from a colonial perspective, because the point is that the British saw all of it as a threat. No matter what the ideological, whether or not you were pushing Black capitalism or you're pushing socialism, whatever you were pushing, it didn't work for British colonialism. And so, yes, you saw as early as 1919, the British colonial government was fascist. To bring it back to that point, they were always fascist. If you were a Black worker in the Caribbean after World War I and you were trying to, figure out what anti-colonialism looked like and what freedom needed to look like, the response you got from the British was fascist. And so even that idea that fascism emerges in the 30s in Europe is a weak concept of what fascism is, because the point is, for people on the periphery, fascism was always part of the colonial agenda.
Wait, but I thought it just started with Trump.
Yeah,
it didn't.
And I think that's on. I think this is, for me, one of the reasons why I think it's important to look at how Black people define the world, or Black people define these movements or oppression. That's like, for example, the invasion of Ethiopia by Italy. That's one of the main reasons, or main causes for producing Rasta. And for decades, the Rasta community has said World War II started with that invasion. That's been Rasta cosmology or consciousness for decades. Meanwhile, historically, folks chided, the Rasta community pushed back against that, but facts being facts, it's true. I also think is, the surveillance piece of Garvey and Black radicalism in the Caribbean, I think, is a really another important point to think about. And Bermuda actually is the seat of this intelligence network that the British utilize. So the intelligence networks that go to England, they all go to Bermuda. It's the seat of the Admiralty, of the Admiral. The British Empire in the Caribbean is being run through Bermuda.
See, that's the real triangle. That other stuff is the bull stuff. That's the nonsense.
No, but it's connected, right? Because the building of the Panama Canal, like that, the British government is also building this massive dock, this military depot in Bermuda, because of the value of the Caribbean is also increasing. And so they use it as an outpost to monitor the region with military, weapons, but also surveillance. So Garvey is being surveilled. Garvey is denied entry into Bermuda on 5 occasions. He can't enter Trinidad. Claudia Jones can't when she's deported from the United States. She's not sent back to Trinidad. She's sent to London. So that the anxiety, in terms of British colonialism in the Caribbean, I think is we have to look at that more.
So they deported and banned the Africans with the Marxist leanings and the Pan-Africanist tendencies. Am I hearing that correctly? Did British imperialism have a problem with all of that?
All of them. All of
Absolutely.
All of
What a
them.
So
surprise,
confused
right?
by all of this. Plus, I thought surveillance also just started with Facebook. So I'm totally. This is all the mind-blowing conversation from both of you. I appreciate that. Anyway, please continue.
No, but frankly, they were concerned that black sailors coming from New York, right, regardless of the political position, were carrying these radical newspapers into the Caribbean. They were just concerned that they have it in the jackets, it's entering the island, and so they had these governors have these debates of, do we just outright ban these materials? Because if we do, that's only going to increase the attention. Or do we place this person under surveillance to carry those documents? And there are debates about how they're going to monitor this material. But Margaret, one of the things I was fascinated by in our brief discussions was you mentioned some of those Caribbean laborers in Cuba and other places, when they go back to Jamaica, back to Barbados, the activism that they take with them. Could you say a little more about those kind of dynamics? For me, that was because that's also Paulo's parents. That's his parents.
I think Bustamante might have been one of them. I think Bustamante was in Cuba in the early 30s. I think he was one of the ones who was deported back to Jamaica. And if you know Jamaican labor history, he ended up helping to lead the labor movement. He also ended up becoming, in my opinion, a revisionist and a sellout, but he still helped break open the labor movement. I think the point that I made there was simply that the reason we have to look at this whole thing as one region and look past the borders is because the repression, the anti-communism in the early 30s that led to the mass expulsion of all these black workers from Cuba, like you said, the energy can't be created or destroyed. It only redirects. That energy from those black workers redirected to where they went. So in 1935, St. Kitts went up in flames. St. Kitts is a sugar production island because St. Kitts was flat enough to cultivate sugar. St. Vincent also, but St. Vincent is so hilly, it's so mountainy, it's very difficult to cultivate sugar there the way you could cultivate it on some of these islands with more flat land, right? So St. Vincent also went up in flames in 1936. Barbados went up in flames in 1936. So, and everyone knows about the labor rebellions of the Anglophone West Indies of the late 1930s. I mean, that's what C.L.R. James's West Indian, radical movement of the late 30s was a direct outgrowth of. He was there in 38. He started his own organization right in the context of these fierce labor uprisings in 1936 and 37 in the Anglophone Caribbean. Now, so what I'm saying is, in part, that is, I think, a response to all the deportation of these radicalized black workers from Cuba, which was in large part communist-led, militant, anti-racist, multiracial movement in Cuba. It comes from more than that, but that's a huge aspect. It also comes from internal contradictions in the British Empire in the mid-1930s, which paved the way for workers to do that. But it also comes in the context of what was happening in the United States in the mid to late 30s, which was the development of something called the CIO. The CIO is the Committee for, what is it, the Committee for what is it? The CIO is the labor movement style, which says we have to all be in one union. You can't have 20 unions in a job at an industry. Because if you have 20 unions, if you have a union for every craft, meaning that the engineers have a union, the janitors have a union, the teachers have a, if everyone has their own union, how can you guys ever sit down at the table with the bosses and force them to do anything because all you guys are working for your own petty interests, right?
Congress of
CIO,
Industrial Workers.
there
Sorry,
you go. Thank you.
of industrial organizations. Sorry,
I'm
that's what.
so embarrassed I didn't remember that, but I
Me
think
too.
that,
I mean, me too. I had to look it up. I typed it up. That's
listen,
all. You know.
point being, the point being is that that concept of CIO style organization, basically what it means is that to be successful in anything, you have to have a general strike mentality. A general strike mentality means burn it down. That's the same way of saying burn it down, right? So in the US, you can't burn it down in the North because there's not, you can't burn because it's not fields, it's factories. So instead of burning it down, you have to sit down. That's what a sit down strike is. A sit down strike is you stop producing on the assembly line, right? So in 1937, you have mass sit down strikes in Detroit, in Flint, Michigan, of all of these workers. So why is it that in Jamaica in 1937, Eulalie Domingo, who is the wife of W. Domingo, who was one of these black workers who helped put Garvey on in Harlem, but he also joined the communist movement. You know, Domingo is the guy who fascinated me. Anyway, his wife writes into the Jamaica, the Daily Gleaner, which is the newspaper of Jamaica in 1937, at the same year that workers are sitting down in Flint, Michigan. And she says to all the women of Jamaica, we need to have a sit down strike in the kitchen. Because all of our husbands are talking about being so radical, being so anti-colonial, being so for labor, and they got us slaving in the home. This don't
Hmm.
work.
Hmm.
How could you possibly have a concept of a sit-down strike in the kitchen unless these concepts were truly international, right? So that's the point. And Domingo at that time, who had been part of the communist movement since 1919, Domingo was in Jamaica trying to help Bustamante and all these guys organize their first major labor union. Now, in Jamaica, of course, you had something called the Inner Circle, which was all of the communists who were operating in Jamaica, who were operating in the labor movement as the left wing of the labor movement. So Domingo was trying to help those guys like Richard Hart. I think Richard Hart might have just died recently. He was alive for a long time. You know, do their communist thing in the labor movement. The point I'm trying to make is just coming back to Keto's question. What helps lead to this mass uprising in the British Caribbean in the late 30s? And I'm just suggesting that the forces that lead to it are always on some level deeply influenced, even directly, by the communist anti-racism and labor militancy of the earlier period. So that's what I mean about trying to write communism back into the history. What you guys are
So
talking about after World War II, I think, is a little more complex.
so thank you for that. I know Dr. Swan has to run, but I want to thank him publicly while he's here, despite all his jokes and hate, that for introducing us and setting up this segment. So shout out to him for that, and we'll have to have you back ASAP. And plus we aren't we planning another sound clash for Black August? We got to start
It's not a song clash, it's a song murderation.
Lady
Okay,
Ethan Food?
we come for murder. Okay, we don't come for clash. We come for murder and bury. Okay, I tell you already. Hey, we got the license to kill and the permit to bury. So watch yourself, sir. Watch yourself. We don't come for clash. We come for kill.
There it is. So
There it is.
I appreciate that.
I'm gonna
I
go
appreciate the
because I
hate.
have to feed my son.
All right, well, shout out to your son. I appreciate him allowing this segment to take off, and Dr. Stevens, I appreciate you and your work and for coming through this morning. And
We'll
shout
be
out to
back.
Dr. Swan.
But
Not so much to More Time, but Dr. Swan is cool. I don't know
See?
about this DJ More Time cat.
Hey, look,
Anyway,
don't. Hey, the shades is right there. You know. No, but I do want to just say one thing that I think speaks to the point. This is in the next project. Well, I'm writing about Black internationalism in Oceania, and there's a moment where Carter G. Woodson in 1920 he gets a letter from A. Goldsmith, who defined himself as a Negro exile in Melbourne, and he tells Woodson that he's reading several Black newspapers and magazines from the U.S. He's reading the NAACP's Crisis. He's reading W. Domingo, A. Philip Randolph's The Emancipator, Socialist Weekly. He's reading The Negro World, and is also reading Woodson's Journal of Negro History. So, across the world, like Black people are looking for this radical content from all these different sectors, and I think that speaks to, some of the discussion we're having. Is like these networks, these political networks, geographical networks are intertwined. Clearly, they're also departed ideologically. But these folks are in the same circles, and particularly when talking about radical literature, Black folks are looking for freedom narratives wherever we can find it in that moment. Margaret, thanks for coming. I thought this was great, and I love the hate. Bring it, more times, right?
We definitely be back with Dr. Stevens, because we got to have this veterans conversation too at some point as well. So we'll be in touch about that. So thanks to you both. Appreciate you, and we'll catch you next time. Take it easy. All right. Thanks again. All right, everybody. We're going to take a quick break. Brother Kaba and I will take just a very quick break, and then we will come back. We got a lot more to get into this morning here at I Mix What I Like. So please don't go anywhere. In fact, if you need a bio break or to get a drink or whatever, please go run and do that. We will be right back here at I Mix What I Like. Don't go anywhere. Black Power Media. Peace, everybody. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Yes, indeed. Back here, that makes what I like live. Black Power Media. Again, shout out to Sister May for the overlays and the backdrops and the everything and all of that stuff. Yeah, Kalanji. We fancy with that. And again, shout out to Sister May for that. And welcome back, everybody, to I Mix What I Like live again here at Black Power Media. And Brother Kaba, welcome back to you as well. And again, shout out to Doctors Stevens and Swan for coming through for that conversation. Any I guess transitional thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, there's so much more to that conversation that needs to be had. So, but and I do appreciate their time. That was a great conversation, and it just really just highlights a whole lot of the fact that a lot of the things that we're dealing with now have always been in play. You know, in terms of just struggle and how we're perceived and all of that. You know, from you know, the folks in power and even I was thinking as Margaret was talking, even among our own people, like a lot of our people don't make the distinction between, you know, if you're Pan-Africanist or you're just a pro-black, or even if you're a Muslim or if you're a communist or socialist, if you're black, you know, they kind of all put us in the same you know boat, even though we may have some differences. You know,
like everybody can get out and get locked up.
Yeah, everybody's a hotep, you know.
Everybody's a hotep.
But also, as I was trying to say before in the beginning, before the technology rudely interrupted me, I wanted to, you know, send my heartfelt condolences to Sister Jacquie, you know, during this time, and as you know, and Kalanji knows, you know, and Dr. Yeli as well. You know, my wife also passed away, you know, 6 years. It's been over 6 years now. And so I definitely understand exactly where Sister Jacquie is. And, you know, it's a transition. It's traumatic. But I'll tell her, you know, to just keep pushing, hold on to whatever it is that you believe in, that keeps you up and keeps you going. And I promise you, if you do that, it will get better. And you will be better. But at this time, this is definitely a time for grief and so forth. So grieve as you need to, and always incorporate your family and the people that are extended family as much as possible, because that they definitely help. So I just wanted to say that. And just last night, I met with a group of people that I have been doing music with for almost 10 years or so. One of our colleagues, brother, just passed away as well. A couple in May, and he was only 50 years old. So we have people that are transitioning. I had a brother that I grew up with. His daughter died on her birthday this past April at 24. You know, this is my brother that I grew up with. So there's been a lot of transitions. So just last night I was meeting with the people in the band that I was with, and I was, you know, we were just kind of just talking about how precious life is, and just honoring and just each other as much as possible, you know. So and again, a vehicle like this is actually as sad as it is that, and I didn't know Brother Abdul, so we're both right here in DC. I never met him, I didn't know him, but just being here and sharing, you know, politics, you know, I felt like he was family, and I felt the pain and the struggle yesterday, and y'all did a fantastic job in honoring the brother. And just showing that side, and I always think about that Shea quote that Kalanji talked about yesterday. You know, that, you know, all the people that I know that are revolutionaries, you know, they may come up and they may seem hardcore and all of that, but they really are motivated by a deep, abiding love for the people. You know, whether it was Dr. Khalid Muhammad, you know, he was totally different away from the stage. He was not, you know, the same type of person off the stage. He was a very thoughtful, loving African. Anybody who ever met Mama Pam Africa, as fiery as she is, as little as she is, a little firecracker, the most loving person you ever want to meet in your life, motivated by love. And even that brother Kalanji, you know, is, you know, whatever. But you know, he's whatever. I ain't gonna say too much nice about him, but the brother.
Yeah, we can't. we can't be going from Che to Pam
Yeah,
to Kalanji, but we get your point for sure.
yeah. But no, seriously though, he's a good brother,
No
good
doubt.
heart, and it came off yesterday. I mean, just seeing the and again, he never met Abdus, I don't believe, as he said, but yet that love, because there's a connection that we have in the struggle, and I felt it too, just seeing y'all, and I, the emotions flowed and all of that. It's just it's a big loss, and at the same time, it's a confirmation that you don't need to know a person for 1,000 years. When you're connected with a common bond, you can know somebody for just a short period of time, and you can still have a very deep connection. And I think just continuing to do the work will only be the best way to honor the brother. So I just wanted to salute to Jacquie and salute to him.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that. And we definitely, again, the link in the show description to the GoFundMe, where you can show some support if, to the extent possible, is there. So please, and we'll continue to encourage people to do that. And of course, inform people as more information is made available. So anyway, I appreciate that. Yeah, well, whatever. This is never easy. But anyway. One of the things that I wanted to get to that we haven't had a chance to this week on the remix show, just because so much has been going on, and then obviously the tribute to Brother Abdus yesterday prohibited it. But I do want to come back to this because you and I, Brother Kaba, have been dealing with this on our weekly gatherings, a little bit of this cryptocurrency stuff. And I just wanted to come back to a little bit of another, I'm going to keep looking at it because it continues to sort of be forcibly introduced into so many of our conversations. And similarly, in the description is a link to this piece in Current Affairs called "Why Cryptocurrency is a Giant Fraud" by Nathan Robinson. Let me see if I can get all of that onto the whoops. Let's see. Easier. There we go. And there's just a couple of points that I want to bring up from this article that I think are important to our conversation here. And I just, there are 3 points that I wanted to quickly make, and then we can, talk for at least, well, I don't know, as long as you all want. One, and I'm largely, again, building off of what is said in more detail in this article, again, linked in the description below. First, with Bitcoin, which is the #1 cryptocurrency at this point, and one being pushed so heavily right now by Hill Harper and a lot of the black bourgeoisie, with Bitcoin, one important point that I think that this article brings up is that there are no consumer protections, and that the claim to privacy and security, which often accompanies arguments around Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, helps merchants, but is a disadvantage to consumers, which overwhelmingly most of us are. And this is, again, an important point that I was very happy this article brought up. More than that, these crypto, as I'm calling them, these crypto pimps actually want us to believe that they are swapping out banks with their own privately owned exchanges, and that this is somehow not replacing a regulated third-party bank with an unregulated, also third-party privately owned platform, which offers no federal protections or for consumers. So as we talked about last week, Hill Harper is on the one hand saying he's promoting his Black Wall Street app, which is a cryptocurrency exchange, which is where you go to buy crypto, sell crypto, mostly Bitcoin, as he's arguing. And as part of that process, the platform, of course, takes a cut and makes money. And if you go back to a video, and I got to add this to the description below, because if you go back to a video I did when the whole GameStop thing came up, and again, riffing off of the Martin's work, wallstreetonparade.com, I was pointing out that what was being claimed as some Robin Hood takedown of Goliath was really a hedge fund sponsored event, which was using the Robin Hood platform to bring in the greater fools, to supply the greater fool theory with more people who would invest into something, boosting the stock value, which was only good for those who owned a majority of the stock, which were not small, retail stock buyers, the little guys, so to speak, but were these big, huge hedge funds. And that the Robinhood platform makes its money not on the trades itself, not on the products being traded themselves, but on the people being brought in to do the trading. They are the product. In other words, it's just like with a media operation. If you are given free access to a platform, or for a nominal fee to a platform or to a media product, you are what is being bought or sold. You're the product. So that's so this is so my first of three arguments.
Free under capitalism is always going to empower the capitalist.
That's right.
That's what capitalists don't give anything for free. If it's for free, then you best believe that you're going to be the product.
And that's why I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. That's it.
But that's why Hill Harper is on the one hand. So anyway, so as I'm saying here, so Hill Harper's digital wallet is merely a black capitalist window dressing for the same more popular Coinbase, which just went public and which again performs the function of a bank, but for a digital currency, only with no government oversight or avenues for redress for consumers. If you lose your money in a scam or forget even your PIN, and there's even a story in this article about somebody, I think, amassing something like $2 million worth of Bitcoin, but they lost their PIN. And if you lose your PIN, it's gone. That's it. Period. Forever. So again, I'm not someone who, again, in the YouTube comments was accusing me of saying, well, you're using the Martins and Wall Street on Parade and former financiers and all these other critics of Wall Street who are themselves defenders of capitalism to be critical of these things. You're using bad sourcing. And I'm saying I'm not using them for their ultimate analysis. I'm using them for information about how the system works for us to provide our own analysis. But what they are showing here is that
the first time we talked about that, that's what we said. We pointed that out that because I forgot which one of them. I think it might have been Warren Buffett who said that this was like a second something capital. What is it? Something squared or something? I forgot.
It's like something exploitative, or the gold rush squared, something horrible.
Right.
Right.
I pointed out the fact that he knows because he's the primary exploiter or what have you. So we pointed that out already.
So I'm not defending banks or saying banks are good, but what I am saying is that at least in theory and legally, if you lose your money in a bank, or if someone rips off if you use a credit card and someone rips it off, or if someone makes an illegal purchase, now legally you are protected. You have recourse. You can again. But with Bitcoin and with Coinbase and with now this black-owned, at least nominally, I couldn't even actually find the specifics on who owns what Hill Harper is promoting as his platform. So it may be his and black owned, but I honestly, I couldn't prove that one way or another. But even if it is black owned, all it is doing is it's saying it's claiming to give people freedom and autonomy while replacing the same function of a bank with less protection for its consumers. And same thing with the direct peer-to-peer purchasing. If I buy something from you and you rip me off, even in this established horrific order we live in now, at least theoretically, there's legal recourse if you're a shop owner, etc. But if it's peer-to-peer, Bitcoin, whatever, you rip me off, there's nothing. It's just gone, and I don't know who you are. I can't prove it. There's no ledger that there's nothing I can go, and there's no oversight. There's no regulation. So while they're claiming, anyway, so the point of this article that I agree with is that while they're claiming to be providing autonomy and freedom, they're really locking us in. So that was that's one. And go ahead, Kaba, if you wanted to say something on that real quick.
No, I mean just
Oh, okay.
another thing. Just
Mhm.
the bigger these things, these platforms get, these systems, like the crypto gets, the more it's gonna be exploitative, and the more it's gonna benefit the people at the top anyway. Like
That's
I
right.
mean, it's basically what you were saying because of course, I remember when crypto was a few $100, and then it came a few thousand, and now it's all the way up to 30 some odd, whatever. Most people can't afford that anyway. So so this whole Robin Hood theory, so to speak, with crypto is the premise is faulty already, because most people don't have an extra $30,000 to invest. Now I do know that you can buy shares of it and parts of it, not the whole thing, but still, most people are not going to really be able to get to that level.
So then, secondly, sort of to that point, again, building off of this article, is that Bitcoin or cryptocurrency's heavy promotion is led by those who have already invested and need more to buy in. What again is called the greater fool theory, required of all Ponzi schemes, but only
Which
to
only
increase,
which only increases their wealth.
which
Because
only
again,
increases the value of their
to my
investment.
last point, the millions of people that can't afford to buy 35,000 or 33,000, it's been going up and down quite a bit over the past couple of weeks. To invest in one crypto, in one Bitcoin, which is 30 some odd thousand. You're going to have millions of people that invest on a smaller scale, and again, that only inflates the wealth of the people at the top. So it's just another Ponzi scheme.
And what I really appreciated from this article is that they make very clear this point in a way that I hadn't really considered myself, and I appreciate it because it's going to help me continue to make this argument, because they point out that when someone says, as in the defenders of cryptocurrency say, that it's a good investment, a quote unquote good investment, what they mean is that it's good. A good investment is good for those who will benefit from the speculation and gamble that you will be the next to buy at a higher price what they have already purchased. So they're trying. So Hill Harper and others are saying investing in Bitcoin is a good investment, so others should go ahead and do it. And what he's really saying is, when you use my platform and invest in Bitcoin, of which I already will have more of than you and have bought at a lower price than you, you're just going to make my investment worth more and my stock portfolio look better. But it's not anything that's going to benefit the person doing the investment, which is, again, gambling, which is all investing really is for the most part speculation and gambling. So we wouldn't say, we certainly wouldn't suggest as a strategy. You might get lucky, but you might have fun for a weekend, but you wouldn't tell somebody as a strategy to go and invest in weekly visits to the casino. And that's what this is essentially inviting people to do. So anyway, so that was the other one. And then the third one is that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency pushers want us to believe that currency is political power and that we can avoid political struggle through speculative investment. It is digital class warfare dressed for us in blackface, and works by telling us that somehow societies are built on currencies and that our revolutionary future is in the mechanism of exchange, as opposed to building policies that assure the outcomes of all exchange benefit everyone. Pushers of crypto do not come from previous radical or revolutionary political formations, but now present themselves precisely as those who will positively change the world. I know it has been reduced to a cliche, but the revolution won't be televised and it won't be blockchained either. So we need to be thinking about, and this goes back to what I love what Dr. Stevens said in that last interview, where I want to continue to argue, if we want specific political platforms to encourage for politicians or people who want our vote or for whatever, they should at minimum contain things like a debt jubilee, meaning all debt is forgiven. All debt is forgiven. Maybe I would say maybe just to, maybe other than a car note. But other than that, all debt should be forgiven, and a redistribution of wealth created by consumers needs to go back to consumers and all working people who make up the bulk of those who will not have the ability to invest. So, and my point about what Dr. Stevens said is that in the absence of an ability or willingness to burn it all to the ground, a general strike similar to my point about a debt jubilee, is as close as is burning it down. So we should be calling for debt jubilees, wealth redistribution, general strikes, or the equivalent of burning down the system, and not calling for people to invest in cryptocurrency. And again, Hill Harper did not come out of some radical movement. Roland Martin did not come out of some radical movement, and yet they are leading this charge saying that cryptocurrency and Bitcoin investment will lead to revolutionary change.
Yeah,
all right, those are my 3 points. Go ahead, my man.
And of course, Joe Biden promised that he was going to alleviate student debt. To your point there, Brother Jared. So I don't know what you're so upset about.
You're right.
I mean,
and my apologies. I
know
apologize to Jim Crow Joe.
I know he hasn't talked about it a lot recently. It almost seems like if I was cynical, I would think that he's trying to just let it fade and let it and see if we forget. But I know Joe wouldn't do that to us because he's a good man.
By the way, there's one more piece in this article that makes this point very well. And I encourage people to read the whole thing. But the author talks about because one of the promises is that cryptocurrency is something that people who are already oppressed and marginalized in the current economy can use to avoid, unnecessary surveillance or abusive, economic policies. And he quotes or he references a section where he talks about a Marxist dominatrix mistress named Magpie. Wow. I thought that was an interesting, not only alliterative use of M, but a Marxist dominatrix mistress named Magpie, who apparently told The Nation magazine recently, quote, that while a majority of her clients are not well-versed in digital currencies, cryptocurrency could offer a way to operate furtively under capitalism in a way that might not be needed in a more open socialist society. But as this article, and as Nathan Robinson points out, this is an argument for having an anonymized digital currency of some sort in the here and now. But it should be noted that it means we should be building a world in which cryptocurrency is obsolete because people aren't prosecuted for victimless crimes, end quote. In other words, instead of trying to, in the sex work world that Marxist dominatrix mistress Magpie is operating, she is making the point I am trying to make in our context, that instead of having people come to us to tell us we can overcome our inequality and use this anonymous digital currency to our benefit, what we should be doing is accessing our only real power, which is political, which is to build a world in which cryptocurrency is obsolete because people aren't prosecuted for victimless crimes. Anyway,
now, how did this person come in contact with the Marxist dominatrix?
He's referencing an article in which she's referenced in The Nation magazine. I don't know if they're clients. I don't know what their relationship. The reference is to an article in The Nation magazine. So I guess the real question would be, what was for you would be
how did they even know?
How did they know? Hey, look,
because you only find stuff like that if you're looking for it.
Hey, like, but I'm not mad at that.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Because if you're gonna go find a dominatrix mistress, let them at least be a Marxist.
And what is who are? I mean, I guess her clients. What are they, like capitalists who become socialists during the sessions?
Or maybe it's just that Mistress Magpie is herself a Marxist who, like many of us who have to practice a different politics where we work, or who have to exist in that kind of contradictory space. She's doing the same thing in hers. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe like you, she wants to run trains between DC and Baltimore.
See. Again, as I outlined very clearly in our last discussion, what I meant was a literal vehicular train that would connect Baltimore to DC through my hometown where I live now, where I grew up, Columbia, Maryland.
What kind of icular? What was that?
Vehicular.
Oh, okay. I thought you said
vehicular.
Something. Okay, all right.
your nasty self. That's just terrible. It's terrible. All right. So I appreciate you working through that with me. One more, I think two more at least that I have to work through relatively quickly. And one of them is related somewhat because it comes back to this issue of buying power mythology and the journalism or the media environment that supports it. So the other day I was interviewed for, I think it's the Business Insider, or is it just Insider? I guess I'm not entirely sure. In this piece here,
Are you still talking about the dominatrix? You said insider. What did you?
This is just. See, this is why we need to get Uncle Devin's show back on here, because we were trying to demonstrate the BPM is for the kids, and then here you come dragging us into somewhere else.
Hey man, you the one that likes to do all these rabbit holes. So I'm just saying.
Oh my God.
I'm getting my Spielberg on today, man.
I see. I was gonna say you try to out pun Big Pun. It's gonna be, I haven't even looked at the chat, so I have to go back and check that in a few minutes. Because speaking of being, dragged and,
I'm gonna stop.
Anyway, no, it's all good, man. I appreciate you. But it's perfectly, because a lot of this is unfortunately too serious and painful, but what really should be comedy. So I was interviewed, and I always accept the interviews, and they almost always go the same way when I think even well-meaning journalists, as I do think Ms. Dana Givens is, contact me from these commercial media outlets. Because of this question of buying power. And I always take the interview, I always appreciate the interview, and it's almost always a Black journalist trying to work within that media environment, trying to do what I think is some good. But I think I won't put this on the individual. I don't know her or her work that well, but I just think it's the environment that really needs to be the focus of the criticism, because I think that's what it is, the situation. But again, so in this article, again linked in the show notes so people could see it, on their own. Businesses bet on Black culture amid demands for racial justice. Now experts warn Juneteenth is next to be whitewashed. And in the article, she starts off, the world mourned after witnessing the murder of George Floyd. Protesters quickly took to the streets, but the racial unrest in late May and June of last year was only the beginning of a larger conversation the country would hold about systemic racism. Black communities called out racial violence and discrimination in workplaces and neighborhoods and schools where American education often leaves out their history. Demands for change also came with calls for corporate reckoning. So this is an interesting, as even just as a critical media literacy exercise, I think this is an interesting line right here, because this is that sort of transition to show you where they want the focus to be. Anybody who studies journalism knows, we talked about this with brother Dr. Konadu the other day about his piece on reparations. I don't know if this was an editorial decision. This may not have even been in Dana Givens, right? It might not have even been her choice. But this just lets you know that this is the shift, that the focus is going to be calls for corporate reckoning. I don't necessarily know to what extent those were the calls of people in the streets. You could have said abolish the police, or some lesser defund the police, or anti-police violence legislation, or some of us were saying get rid of the 1033 program and AFRICOM, shut it all down, blah 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 blah. But this article is reducing the struggles around George Floyd's killing to calls for corporate reckoning. And obviously with a business focus like this outlet, and like most commercial media that houses these discussions, Black or white, by the way, this is what happened. So Black consumers began demanding that multi-million-dollar private corporations and public institutions take accountability for their part in systemic discrimination. major corporations courted these same consumers by using Juneteenth, a once relatively unknown holiday that gained wider recognition in the aftermath of Floyd's death, and on Thursday became a U.S. federal holiday. Critics, however, also supported by Republicans. Critics, however, say the new corporate support is just a repeat of political powers using holidays for consumption rather than education. I remember the fight for Martin Luther King Day over the years, and now this is the sales day. Earl Folks, the president of the Center of Black Equity, told Insider. Juneteenth is another opportunity for businesses to sell to Black folks and wrap it up, he added. Few Americans outside Black communities knew about Juneteenth, the June 19th holiday that commemorates the end of slavery in the U.S. before last year. 45% of Americans polled last year said they first learned about it in 2020, while 12% said they'd still never heard about it or never learned about it. Moving down just a little bit here, the goal, Joe Biden signed the bill, but here's where, companies surely see the potential to court the Black community's $1.2 trillion in annual spending power. Now, this was the first point that I made in our interview that I keep making all the time, that no one that I somehow can't get any of these journalists to focus on or to investigate, even if they want to try to prove me wrong. So I keep pointing out, I said from the very beginning, the premise that there is a $1.2 trillion spending power is itself false. So anything proceeding from that is going to be mistaken. And yet right here, slam in the piece, it just puts it there. No link, no citation, no reference. It's just there. And then right behind it is, quote, "It is the commercial world adjusting itself to continue to attract as many Black consumers as possible," Jared Ball, a professor at Morgan State University who wrote the book Myth and Propaganda, Black Buying Power, told Insider. So on the one hand, I definitely want the book to get mentioned. I'm glad that she did. But I also think it's funny that it comes right after it's accepted that buying power is real, and that it comes even in a sentence where the title of my book is saying that it's not. But anyway, same thing in the very next graph. While accounting for only 14% of the U.S. population, Black consumers have outsized spending power in product categories as varied as feminine hygiene and refrigerated drinks, a 2018 Nielsen report found. Again, as I said in the interview, and I keep saying over and over again, these reports are for marketing and ad spending, not an assessment of how Black people, what the condition of Black economics. And they reference the Selig Center for Buying Power only to falsely promote that Black people are spending amounts of money that Black people don't actually have to attract ad revenue to certain commercial Black or white owned businesses. So, but there it is again, the report there. I've already gone through these reports in many other videos and discussions that show that they themselves are not, again, assessments of anyone's economic condition. They use as for their sole source as a reference to buying power, the Selig Center report, which is itself, as I continue to point out, is mythology or constructed on the false basis. Did you want to jump in and say something? My bad. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, this just outlines to me why this highlights for me why, and a reminder why I didn't actually pursue a career in journalism, because once I figured out that I would have to, adhere to a certain narrative or there's certain things that I could not actually report on, I couldn't do it. There's no way I could. So I just worked in other aspects of the media, but I just couldn't be a journalist for any mainstream. And I was on my way to doing it, but I couldn't live with myself in doing it. And another thing that came up as you were reading that and recounting that is the fact that they have to acknowledge your work, because it is getting some traction. And so what they have to do is they have to acknowledge your work and still frame it within the narrative of the fact or the misfact or the non-fact that that there's this $1.2 or $3 trillion. And I think to almost somewhat in their defense, I think that particular narrative is so engrossed upon, inculcated into people's consciousness that I don't think that they even, I don't even think they can really hear it. You know, sometimes like if you present somebody with something and they can't really, it's like a cognitive dissonance. Like they cannot accept the fact that that's not true.
Look, I even include at the end of the book some research that suggests why my argument is not going to take hold. So I get it, and that's why I'm saying I'm not mad at her or anybody individually. Right. I mean, I get it. I mean, but to your point, the very next line, I mean, she says critics like Ball, however, argue this buying power does, and I actually sent her a note that says I think you left out a word here, that this buying power does not always equal the political power needed to start real change. As somewhat accurate as that sentence is, it misses the point that I keep trying to drive home, that it's not that buying power doesn't always equal this, that, or the other. I'm trying to say buying power is not real. It's not a real concept. So I mean, it's very difficult because again, as she's coming back to here, these are marketing, ad groups that are assessing consumer spending. These big numbers get thrown around, the $1 trillion, the companies pledging $50 billion to racial equity,
and
it gets repeated on and on and on. You got major corporations, Nike, Twitter, Google, Netflix sharing
some people that we like, some people that we admire have said it, as you pointed out, all throughout history.
Absolutely.
I mean, and as I told you, I used to, I believed it, because I didn't invest, it was like common knowledge. Why would you need to, but like I said, through your work and work with some other people who you used to work with, I came to find that was, that there was a different reality than what and you gotta square with that and be willing to say, you know what, gotta rethink this. And when you do, especially if you're trying to really get things right and understand the world, it makes sense that it's not true, because it's only consistent with everything else that we know about how this world is run.
So listen, this is to your point, to both of our points, actually. This is the part here that to me, this is what I look for when I want to know, when I want to make a personal assessment of the journalist. This is what I look for, something like this. And this is why I think that Miss Givens is another in her heart decent human being struggling in a very untenable environment. Because, and this is the part that I think suggests her good nature, because she says here, but while Black consumerism is being directed towards because she goes through and talks about the billions and the corporations and the advertising and the hopeful and the Black owned businesses being called to support, blah, blah, blah. She says, but while Black consumerism is being directed towards marginalized businesses, some activists say it still isn't enough. None of these actions will address the inequality that Black people continue to suffer, Ball told Insider. That inequality is not born out of financial literacy or illiteracy, shopping, or consumption habits, end quote. And to me, that's just a little sign that she heard at least some of my argument and at least took away some core point, which is just this here, that and I would not expect much more to be said in an outlet like that than this, that this is not a question of financial illiteracy or illiteracy, shopping, or consumption. So I appreciate that. But again, it just goes to show, again, just to connect these two stories real quick, is that this is one of the reasons why I think we continue to have so many problems on the other end with even people, even if Hill Harper and Roland Martin want to be seen as in their heart trying to do good work, they are woefully confused and confusing, in part because of an environment created by this kind of commercially arranged journalism. So
well, if you're proceeding off of faulty premise, it really doesn't matter what your intentions are. It's always, your conclusions are always going to be faulty. I mean, that's just basic math, basic logic. So that's the problem there. And I think the sister probably, I mean, we don't know what's in her head, but there's a couple of scenarios. One of them is what you just said. She might have wanted to do the right thing, and maybe the editors got to it, as Dr. Conadu points out, or she might have self-edited herself because she knows, you know the limits. Like, you got to go up to a certain line and you got to cut it off if you want to keep that gig. That's just how it works. And to some extent, we all have to do that if we're working in this society. You know, if you're working for, you know, in the society for somebody else, and maybe to some extent even for yourself, you know, there's just certain limitations, which is why, like Dr. Dr. Stevens just said, you know, we may want to look at some other alternatives, you know, in terms of how we want to live our lives. You know, and if we're going to play the game, then play the game. I mean, play hardball. You know, the general strike. You know, those kinds of things. You know, hold your votes. You know, I've always said that. I'll be honest. I haven't voted for a president in since 1992. The first time I voted was in 1992. I didn't know any better, and I voted for, you know, I didn't inhale. I voted, but maybe I didn't inhale. Maybe I didn't even vote because I don't know. But whatever the case is, you know, I haven't for a long time, and it's like, if you're not going to make real demands, and if you're not going to have a critical enough mass of people who are willing to withhold votes and really play hardball with these people, you're never going to get anything. You know, and so that's if you're going to play it. I'm just saying, and the preposition is very strong. If you're going to play that particular game, then do it or get off the pot. You know, that's my philosophy.
No, I agree. And look, I self-censored in the buying power book. I didn't say everything I thought was going on or should happen. So I get it. And that's why I think all solutions have to be collective, because individually we will self-censor and put limits that have to be checked. So And
in terms of the economics, if you know, in terms of people with the crypto, I mean, we have examples that are historic and even contemporary of African people and other peoples really working together. You have Isusus, you know, where the money really is distributed, and everybody, it goes around, and everybody, and there's a pot, and one person gets it a month or whatever, however period of time you want to work it out. I mean, if you really want to do economics and use, you know, capital, that's how you're going to do it. In a more equitable way. It's unlike crypto. It's open. Everybody sees. It's transparent. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows the process. There's an honor in it, because, you know, you're not going to just go in and get yours and then drop out. And that's not how it works. You know, so there are those kinds of things. You know, I personally belong to a couple of them. You know, and have been for years. And it's an honor system. It's a way that we can kind of help each other out, and everybody wins. You know, that's an alternative system than just, you know, trying to participate in another Ponzi scheme, you know, disguised as a Robin Hood theory.
And the issue is, you're not going around telling people, if you invest in our circle, you and the rest of us will be free. Like that right. Is to me, that's the key difference. That's the key issue for all of this. We're all making mistakes. I just don't want our mistakes to be connected to, I'm telling you, you have to pay me to learn how to get free or to figure out. I mean, that's where I start to see the hustle. So we'll continue to deal with this, because as long as people keep, you know, as long, you know, obviously, you know, but one of the last thing I wanted to bring up today, we've been trying to get some interviews together on this since I saw, I don't know if you've seen the Heights. I've now seen it twice, but speaking of Panama, I thought it was great to see this sister from Panama respond, because apparently the you know, the legendary Rita Moreno here on Stephen Colbert's show praised Lin-Manuel Miranda and his film The Heights for, as she said, you know, in part at least, putting Latino-ness back on the map. So I found an article that referenced this sister here, who was described as a Panamanian activist, Clean Luzmila Caraballo. And I put the link again in the description, because I think what she says here is great and very and accurate, given, you know, anyone who has seen this musical about Washington Heights in New York. So she says, really wanted to peacefully stay away from all this, but a few things. First, to say that Miranda brought Latino-ness to the U.S. screen single-handedly is a wild statement for many reasons, most because it isn't true, and it addresses a larger issue. The term itself is as ridiculous as it sounds. We can't measure or even define, put parameters around Latino-ness as a whole because it's built on dozens of starkly different, though individually beautiful communities. If the In the Heights dialogue that's unfolding to healthily challenge the lack of inclusion for the betterment of potential progressive healing of this already fractured larger cluster composed of notoriously, historically, often racist set of individual communities, challenges or threatens the cup by which people read mostly non-Black racialized Latins have decided to measure Latino-ness, it's safe to say it's a fragile one and indeed not a safe space for all. To ask offended or hurting individuals whether or not you understand or not, to hit pause. I'm sorry, to ask offended and or hurting individuals whether or not you understand or not, to hit pause for now is why we're at where we're at. It's always we'll deal with it later, and later never comes. Every day I think I want better for us, and every day I'm disappointed still I want better for us. My bad. The other part of what she says in this clip is that that people who are complaining about the lack of representation of dark-skinned Latinos in the musical, which is clear, they're doing too much, and she says, you know, we can't just be complaining about every single little thing, and we have to, you know, wait until later. And she has come back out and tried to apologize.
Yeah, did she say that they needed to push him left? Did she say that?
Almost. I mean, she might as well. I mean, that was basically the sentiment. Like, we should be happy we got what we got, and you know, she's obviously. Yep. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. That just shows the insidiousness, like of the society, you know, that we live in right now, because it basically it's got us so caught up in the validation systems, which are basically media are basically just validation systems. And so the extent to which we're not quote unquote represented in those spaces renders us quote unquote invisible. And so to the extent that we are represented at all, that's how so many people unfortunately you know, gauge whether or not we're being accepted in the society. And accepted almost always means accepted by white people. Because they are the prime validators, because whiteness is always considered to be the highest level of achievement in this country, and in the society really across the world. And so this whole idea of recognition and representation is you know, is just this another example of identity politics, you know, just run amok, and the misrepresentation of mere presence. You know, presence, you know, doesn't mean power. You know, again, we've had several examples throughout history to prove that. You know, again with Obama, you know, and I thought it was fascinating what Dr. Stevens said about being Iraq veterans against the war, because I remember that in the Winter Soldier and all that stuff was going down back before that, back with the Vietnam era. And again, if you really look at that, that was really an anti-Nixon piece proffered by the Democratic Party,
right.
probably. So no, you know,
I agree with that.
It's just very interesting how this whole representation piece is used and politicized, and in the guise of empowerment. It's really just more furthering and entrenching the power of those at the very top. Ultimately, just like the whole thing with this crypto, it's the same kind of game that's going on.
By the way, this is true. In the play, The Haunting of Lin-Manuel Miranda is by Ishmael Reed, and I believe the video is up and you can see it. I saw at least some of it when it aired live, and you know what? I didn't go back and finish watching it, so that's my bad on that. But
I bet it's funny.
I bet it's funny, and what I did see was funny. Ishmael Reed is, you know, a legendary hater. We have some classic interviews with him at imixwhatilike.org. I invite people to go check some of those out, especially when we were on WPFW and he was hating on Dave Zirin while Dave was listening, which was funny. And an interesting, it was a good time, good times. No, I appreciate, you know, look, we watched it. My household is very diasporan. We're all, you know, Panamanian, we got West Indians, we got, I mean, with the you know, black folks, the whole gamut is represented. And
is that why you feel compelled to always, you know, promote this false football that you always?
well, I meant to bring that up with Keto too, man, because today there's another big game, and I know he's a big fan of the world's greatest sport. And I completely forgot to bring it up. England, Scotland today is you know, we watched Brazil beat Peru last night. I mean, it's a lot of good stuff happening.
Yeah. Well, the Nets and the Sixers, that was a good game too.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. And it's not that I don't like basketball. I'm a big basketball fan. I just like, you know, but we watched the Heights twice, and you know, in the house, and there was a lot of the same thing. You know, this is why I think the Vernon philosophy of black media avoidance is so important, and it should be extended to any and regroup. You cannot look for yourself in this commercial media, and we were, you know, and I can't, you know, I'm not gonna be arguing with Abuela. You know, I'm not gonna be disagreeing with you know, the grandparents, and you know, but I don't.
You trying to put it on her? You trying to put it on Abuela?
Well, there was some disagreement. I mean, it was
as an excuse,
like,
as an excuse for watching it. Is that what you're trying to do?
I'm blaming the whole family. I'm not putting this. I'm not just on her. I'm blaming the whole family. My daughters included. They wanted to see it too. I blame them too. I'm putting the blame everywhere. And
but that's what I said. The insidiousness. That's what I'm saying. It's so insidious because it creates that kind of desire to be, and it's understandable. You know, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I went to go see Black Panther 3 times. You know, I took my kids. I thought it was a great visual, and at the same time, the politics in it was horrible. And I made sure to point that out. You know, so yeah. I mean, I had my own little contradictions there, but I thought. I mean, that whole, you know, we are the world, you know, give up the resources. I mean, that's as you pointed out, that's some anti-Lumumba stuff going on, and we got to call it out. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
The way the Black Panther viewing in our household ended up happening was my daughters saw it separately from me the first time. And I loved.
They had to sneak and watch Black Panther the way we used to have to sneak.
I feel like that's what was happening.
Eddie Murphy records.
I feel like that's what was happening. But what I loved about it was that they came home, and the first thing, they both walked into the kitchen and said, "We're not going to ruin it for you, but we know which one you're going to think is the hero, and we think you're right." And I was. Obviously, by the time I saw it and we all agreed, they were like, we knew you were going to think Killmonger was right. And Daddy, I think you're right. They were like, Daddy, I think we were supposed to, they were trying to make us like the other one.
Okay.
But my kids got it. That is literally one of the most proud moments. Oh my God, that's a win. Cause I'm absolutely team Killmonger all day. I'm on Killmonger's team. So absolutely. But that my children knew that's where I was and agreed was like, yeah, I was like, yeah.
And even with him, they still had to like put some real big flaws in him. And almost make him, you know, in order to be the revolutionary, he had some points, but he was crazy. You know,
that's right.
So they still got a Hollywood that thing.
That's right. He had to kill the elder and burn the crops. They had to do everything to make us hate him. And I was just sitting there like the whole time. You're not gonna make me hate him because he's right. And absolutely, and I love that the BPM crew seems largely on that as well. Yes, indeed, Team Killmonger all day. But listen, so anyway, so that was really all I had. I just was very happy that it is a Panamanian sister that called this out, called Rita out. And, you know, for those who might not understand,
you
Rita,
all the points, boy. You get all the points with your wife and your family, but her family, boy. You got the soccer or so-called football. Go, go with that guy, go. He said it for like 35 seconds. He's holding it, go. But so you getting that, and you get the wife. I mean, you just
happy wife, happy life, man. I mean,
I mean, yeah. I mean, I can't blame you, bro.
It's a
you
simple
outnumbered.
formula.
Yeah, you outnumbered anyway. You got 3 women in the house, three ladies in the house with you. You know, you might as
It's
well
just
just
me
go
and the
ahead,
dog, man, holding it down for the man.
holding it down. But yeah, but speaking of
And
teams, I'm
losing.
team. Yeah,
Happily.
well,
Happily.
that's why you just concede when you have to.
Gotcha.
But I'm Team Prince, by the way. Just looking at what happened this past week, I love.
Yeah.
Mike has some. Early on when I was a child, I thought as a child, I spoke and I understood as a child. But when I became a man, I became a Prince fan. That's
Well said.
my old Bible days when I grew up in the church. 1 Corinthians 13th chapter. Yeah, they thought I was gonna be a preacher too at one point. Believe it or not.
I believe it, and you'd have been a good one.
I've been like James Cleveland up there singing and stuff. I'm making all the money. My wife used to joke about that. Say, I wear one of them big hats. We can get paid.
I don't know. She had to be thinking like why'd I marry the one honest preacher? You know what I'm saying? Like why we could have done so well.
Yeah.
My wife has that moment too.
I think she was joking.
Yeah, me too. My wife, we could, if you could have just sold out a little bit more, just a little bit more, we could have maybe had a nice thing or two. But this
is why we can't have nice things, because you messing up the flow, man, with these interviews and stuff, talking about we don't have $1 trillion and stuff. Just say we got $1 trillion to get paid. You'd have been all over the place, man. You'd have been all over the. You did all this research and you found out we had $1 trillion, man.
I should have said the realities of Black buying power.
There it is.
The power in Black buying power, and we'd have been all good. But I am Team Prince. I am just advocating that people see that documentary. I think it's Chasing the Truth, so that Michael Jackson, because I want Michael Jackson's L versus Prince to be based on music. And that argument, I don't want to be based on these false allegations, despite whatever Mike's, his other issues were. Prince.
You mean like his vitiligo?
Yeah, all of the social stuff, the awkward, the childhood, the all of that, the monkey, the Elvis Presley's daughter.
You like Bubbles?
I'm just saying all of that stuff is eccentric, and I want to leave that out of the argument as to whether or not he's better than Prince. And
let me tell you, I actually met Prince one time.
Oh, damn.
I was in 2002. It was at the Patriot Center, which is on the campus of what's that? It's a college in Northern Virginia. What's it called? It's named after some enslaver white boy, Mason. George Mason.
George Mason. That's right. I was going to say which one. You got Madison. You got so many. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's a lower bunch of them. But I was a part of this kind of press junket, and we were. He wanted to talk to us, to Black press behind, and this is 2002. So he wanted to talk to us backstage. So we met him backstage, and he's very small. I mean, like what's his name? Jamie Foxx said he was dainty. I cracked up when I heard him say that, because he was very, very, but he was real cool. Deep voice. Yeah, I didn't look him in the eyes.
Is this about to be a basketball and pancake story?
No, I didn't float. I didn't levitate. I didn't see any levitation. But he was just real cool, man. And he was talking about the fact that, because this was that time when he was fighting with the record companies and stuff, and he was like, changed his name and all that kind of stuff. And so he was saying that he couldn't get his records played even in Minneapolis, like they wouldn't play. And he was, and I'm bringing this, kind of connection, because he was talking about how racist Minneapolis was, which, of course, people were like, what, Minneapolis is in the North, now we see all the stuff with Minneapolis with George Floyd, and then the other situation that sister Kim Brown was talking about the other day with the brother. That's not getting a whole lot of play, but he was just he was a very interesting cat, man. And I actually met Stevie Wonder, because y'all talked about Stevie too. I showed you the picture of that. I think I showed you the picture.
I just want to say real quick that this is trifling right here.
What's that?
Jared Eric Dyson. That's messed up. You're
gonna change it from jab to Jed, right?
That's messed up.
Dr. Jed.
You can't win. You can't win a fight with no. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You can't. Jed can't be better than Jab. You better get out of here than that. Oh my goodness, this is terrible. Go ahead, man. Tell us your Stevie Wonder story.
No, I met him. He went to Everlasting. I went to Everlasting Life, which is a vegan spot up on George Avenue, right
Shout
across
out
from
to
Howard
Everlasting
University.
Life. That's it. Yep.
And it was 2016, and I went there with my family, and we went in there to get some brunch on a Sunday, and he was in there chilling out because I saw people running around looking crazy. I'm walking in there, I'm like, what's going on in here? Like, why y'all acting so strange? And then I looked, and I was like, that dude looks like Stevie Wonder. And I kept walking, and I went and ordered my food and this and that. I came back, and I was like, that dude really looks like Stevie Wonder. And I was like, that is Stevie Wonder. Now, of course, we were going to leave, take our food and leave. But obviously, for some reason, we ended up staying and eating there in the table next to Stevie Wonder, So, and people were coming up to him trying to get autographs and stuff. And I was like, I'm not going to bother the man, because I've met celebrities before, but this is Stevie Wonder. This ain't just your garden variety celebrity. So I waited till he finished the evening, and then I went up to him and introduced myself and told him we knew some mutual people and this and that. He appreciated that, and they appreciated the fact that his people were like, we really appreciate the fact that you waited, because we knew you wanted to take a picture, because of course he's Stevie Wonder. They know people, notice him. But
did
we
you
really
sing?
appreciate
Did you sing for him?
Nah, people always ask me. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that, because I know people always want to come up to him and sing.
Please listen to my demo.
I ain't want to bother. I ain't want to go EPMD on him like that. Maybe another time. But because I almost broke out some Donnie, but I know how he would have taken that. But y'all mentioned Donnie and how Donnie changed his flow.
Would he have been offended? He'd be like, "How you?"
Like he did. I mean, I'm like, hey man, he influenced you.
Yeah.
But he was real cool, man. Real funny dude, man. Real funny.
Right
I met both of them. I met Prince, and I didn't meet Michael, but I probably was too old for Michael. But anyway, I met Prince, and I met Steve.
That's messed up. See, this is what I'm saying. That's just so foul. Anyway, now listen. Look, we do. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap here. I'm gonna have to, move on. I can't just do this all day. I gotta take a shower. Yeah, really. Really, yeah. Please go do that. Yeah, really. Please go do that. It's wafting through the interwebs. No,
yeah. Or maybe I'll go. Maybe I'll go see the what's her name? The Matrix, the Dominatrix,
the Marxist. What was her name again? Hold on.
Dominatrix. Maypole.
Magpie. The Marxist. The Marxist dominatrix.
Yeah.
The Marxist dominatrix mistress Magpie.
There it is. She might like a sweaty black man. You never know. Maybe not.
On that note, we appreciate you. Thanks, Brother Kaba. Thanks to Dr. Stevens and Swan and more time. Shout out to all the folks who came through this morning. Definitely appreciate you. Definitely please check the link to support the Luqmans and of course rest in power to Brother Abdus. And please come on back the rest of the day for the rest of your Dope Fridays here at Black Power Media. And we'll catch you next time right here at I Mix What I Like Live. Oh, and don't forget the special Juneteenth 5 a.m. Eastern live with Dr. Ichile out there in Baltimore. We'll be right here broadcasting Sunday morning, Juneteenth, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers. Brother Kaba, shout out to you as well, and enjoy yourselves, man. Thanks again, everybody. Peace if you're willing to fight for it. As Fred used to say, we'll catch you next time. Everybody, peace.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.